Microdose, yeah. Microdose, 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 dose. Microdose, microdose, dose. Microdose, microdose, dose.
5, 4, 3. What's good, y'all? Kush here, coming to you with the newest edition of the Microdose. We hope you've been having a great time. We're sorry we missed you last week. I got nothing, guys. I dropped the ball on that one. Normally, I like to blame it on life gets in the way or work came up. I just dropped the ball. That's my bad. My apologies. Before we get into the show tonight, I can't really get into exact details, but Miss Robin Seto needs your hugs and your kisses virtually. So send her a big shout out. She's been going through some stuff here and could use all the positivity that she could get. That's about all I'm going to say on that. But the show must go on, and we have quite a show tonight. Local by choice, international by nature, all the way from tropical Alberta, Canada, Rambling Ronnie's podcast with Rambling Ronnie. Ronnie, how you doing tonight?
Cue the soundboard with the audience clapping. Hello. Yes, the tropical Alberta. It's very exotic here. We've got a lot of snow, and it's really hard to drive anywhere.
Oh my goodness.
But yes, thank you. It's Rambling Ronnie. Thank you for having me on.
Hey, thanks for being a part of this. Every time we get to meet someone outside of these lower 48, it's always a fascinating discussion. So
it's the same for me too. I always love meeting people from other places, and especially like California or Florida. I definitely like attach and live vicariously through people in those areas.
Okay, fine. Well, we're coming from San Francisco, California, so you should fit right on in then.
Yes.
Alberta, Canada. Are you from there? Are you from another province? What is a province? We're going to get into all sorts of little basic questions here.
Well, there is Providence, Rhode Island, I believe, but we're provinces here, which is so similar.
Oh.
Or Provence, if you want to say it French. but yeah, no, I've lived in a few different provinces. So Alberta is kind of, it's a more western province, but not right on the coast. British Columbia is the coast, and that's actually where I'm originally from. So I really miss it. BC, they joke, means bring cash, but it also means just it's just beautiful. BC. It's an amazing place. It's so gorgeous. So Alberta is kind of prairie-ish. And then I've lived in Saskatchewan, which is going east from Alberta, and that's super prairie land. And then there's Manitoba, and then go on and on. So I'm in the western provinces, and yeah, it's very cold and not very exciting.
Is it like just a giant state, or is it a large county? Is it a tiny country unto itself within Canada? I can't get my hand around it.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know why there's such different terms throughout the world. I'm sure there's a person that's knowledgeable about that, but it's like a state, but just a really big state. So it's like, I think Alberta, you could fit a couple Germanys in it. I know that for sure. So it's like our provinces are quite big. Canada's a pretty big country, but everything's quite spread out. Like our population, I'm sorry, I didn't study everything about Canada, even though I live here, so I'm not prepared to do a bunch of trivia, but I will do my best.
That's okay.
but I'm sure the population, like in Alberta alone, is like probably in all of Alberta is the same as San Francisco or something. It's like not like super full of tons of people. So it's nice.
And what is your main export? No, we're not going there. We are here to talk today about
hockey players.
Hockey players and pro wrestlers.
Yes.
Who's your favorite pro wrestler? The Hart family, I guess.
I wouldn't say a favorite because I can't say for sure. Who's a wrestler I know? I mean, I would say my favorite wrestler is from South Park, but that's not real life technically. So the teacher.
Take it. Yeah. So let's see here. You do Rambling Ronnie's podcast. How new or old is this show? It's available on all the major platforms, Spotify and Stitcher, I imagine.
Yeah, it's on all of those. So especially Stitcher, Google Podcasts. It is on Apple. I don't have I have an iPad, but I never have it charged and don't use it all the time. So I don't go on Apple to see how things are. But I know I went on it once and I had to pull an episode. It was my Raft of Medusa one, which was one of my newer ones. But I kept trying to edit it and upload it, and it never was uploading the right one properly, it seemed like. And I was so tired and just busy at the time. I just took it off completely, and it's like one of the most interesting episodes, but I might just have to redo it. But yeah, it's available on all those on different platforms. So it's Rambling Ronnie's podcast. And yeah, I talk about true crime and unsolved mysteries, but I also kind of talk about whatever else I feel like talking about because I'm still finding out what I want to do with it, really, because it was this weird thing that came up. It's newish, but I started it last year. So officially, my first episode came out around May or June or something. I should know that, but I don't. But
I get it.
Yeah. I can't even quite remember what happened this morning in my life. So I definitely can't remember last year too well specifically. But yeah, I've been doing some schoolwork stuff, like doing some schooling, and I'm doing social media web marketing. So just for projects, I had to kind of come up with business stuff for certain projects and things. And I didn't really have anything. So I was like, I just thought, well, maybe I'll do a podcast and I can maybe get into the inspiration in a little bit, but kind of came to me and I decided to, tailor my projects with my podcast. And it then just kind of became, just a thing that came from that. And that's why I don't have tons of episodes because I'm still doing school and I'm still working. So I've just haven't had the brain capacity to like do research that I want to do or to have the right time to do the things I want to do. So yeah, it's just kind of this little thing that I've got going on, my little pet project, I'm calling it. So yeah, I'm looking forward to being able to get more into it in a handful of months once I'm all done school. So
okay. Well, is marketing your major or your minor, or just one of the subjects you happen to be working with, and this project came up?
It's a major. Big. I wouldn't even call it that. I'm just going to like one of those institutions that has basic things like school that like courses you can take that will quickly get you into something kind of thing. So that's kind of what I'm doing, and it's social media web marketing. That's what it is. Big. So learning just about the different social platforms and different things about marketing and business. And I definitely don't feel like I'm anywhere near an expert, but I've been doing this school for a little over a year now. And, we'll see what I do with it. I originally went into it hoping that I could help run the social media for a drag queen or something, because I'm obsessed with like RuPaul's Drag Race. I was like, maybe I could help with their Instagram or something. I don't know, because I was honestly at a point where I was like, I don't know what to do with my freaking life. This is like, I've just been scrubbing toilets for years. So that's kind of...
I've been finding one of my biggest challenges is social media. Now, this has been a normal thing for me for at least 15 years now, but it doesn't matter what I post on social. It doesn't matter what hashtags I use. Maybe it's just me and my voice and my friends, but like no one gives a shit. I guess to the point where like we're not even getting negative feedback, which might not be a bad thing, but I would, like,
yeah,
you don't have to be rude, but I was still like turn the volume levels up or turn the volume levels down. At least like that kind of feedback, and we're getting zil.
Yeah, just something to give you an indication that you're even being seen, like, and heard. Because that's the thing. It's like you look at the numbers and it's like, okay, why hasn't, maybe it's been 5 people who listened to this episode. Why have none of them like wanted to reach out and say something or whatever? And so then you go, what is it? Like, if it's bad, I want to know. Like, if it's not interesting, I want to know. Or if it's the other way around, I'd like to just have some kind of feedback. And so, again, I'm still not in this realm of being an expert, but what I do find, especially with Twitter, is people follow each other, but a lot of podcasters follow each other and share each other. And it's like, who are you reaching if you're only reaching other podcasters? Because they're not going to be sitting there listening and obsessing over your podcast usually. And it's also, it's the consistency of posting. You have to always be posting stuff and be super active. And so that's what's hard, is especially I don't have content. So that's what my struggle has been, is I haven't been creating content. So it's what am I supposed to post? So, and yet I go on all the time and I'm engaging all the time because I love memes. And so I love sharing weird, stupid memes that make me laugh, stuff like that. So, I do like, that side of it, but it's pretty exhausting. That's why, you look at it and you're like, that's why people get hired to do this stuff. And it seems weird. And that's why when I went into it, I was like, would anyone even be actually hiring, or is this some kind of made up thing? Like, how does this happen? But if you think of how much effort goes into all the little things with having to create content and then spend time posting and engaging and going across different platforms so you reach different people, it's a lot.
Content creator to content creator, this stuff lives in perpetuity. So in theory, it's always going to be chipped away at over time once it's been released. You'll always have that huge spike, and then it'll do something or it won't do anything, but it's usually consistent. When you do social media for the content you do produce, do you notice a significant spike, or is it just like 4 guys showed up?
There's a bit, but I've just haven't even been taking the time to look that closely at my analytics and stuff.
Fascinating.
Just because I'm at the place where it doesn't even matter to me, because I'm just too busy trying to figure out my real life stuff to deal with creating content and stuff.
Life gets in the way.
Yeah. And so it definitely, it's like you have to be driven and make sure you're making the content and putting it out there. But I definitely do notice like there is so much more engagement. If I just look at the engagement aspect of things, is that when I'm posting stuff, and it's stuff definitely related to my podcast, it's interesting to look at the amount of likes and shares and retweets or whatever and comments and stuff like that. And so like recently doing the episode with your other co-host, Mr. Mike Fish.
Mr. Mike
who
Fish
was on
of
my
the Waffle
podcast.
Box podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, from Waffle Box. It was so fun. And we covered the review of Sleepaway Camp. And so it was just interesting, like getting some different people's feedback and the way I've engaged with them ever since and stuff. It's pretty cool. And it can be disappointing at times, but it's so rewarding when you do get the right people who engage. And like, even if they don't become a huge fan, if that you still have the right person who listens and has a good comment and like helps bring a conversation going. Because that's the big thing, is I kind of like when I started the podcast thing, it was like, I don't really know what's going to happen with this, but it's still a nice way for me, because I try to always comment and get into discussions with because I listen to so many podcasts, especially true crime. And I'm into true crime stuff. And so sometimes though, it's not as, you don't get the right people, like people don't talk back to you as much because you're not the host or you're not whatever. So I don't get as much I'm not in those communities, I guess. So having my own podcast, I'm like, maybe this can help me to meet the right people who think the way I do and who want to talk about the things I want to, kind of thing. Yeah.
I gotta say, Mike Fish is very good with his social media, or at least he's better than me. I swear I was doing the same thing 3 years ago that he's doing today, and he's pound for pound getting better results. I was like, what is going on? Like, I know here's what I've noticed. You can have the shiniest thing in the world that is professionally produced and no one will give a shit. You can have the crudest thing in the world, but as long as people like you, gets a million billion hits. And then it's probably better to have something consistent, like, once a week, once every 2 weeks, once a month, at least people know when to tune in. Or you can just like do what one YouTuber, it doesn't matter. He has no consistent schedule. He has nothing. It's perfect or it isn't. And I don't release it before it's perfect. And then he still gets a million billion zillion hits.
Yeah.
It's a quagmire, if you will.
It's definitely, and it is a waiting game. There's people who have started their own podcast like 5 or 6 years ago who now have their own network, which is them and another podcast or something. So it takes, if you, depending on how you want to do it, what connections you have, all that kind of stuff. Cause that's a huge thing. Like one of the big networks that I follow all the podcasts on and I have been listening to for a few years is Last Podcast on the Left. And they also, again, have, I think it's more connections and stuff like that with a lot of people, like in regards to how they socialize with people or something, like personally, I'm introverted. So it's not like I even have everyday people in my life that I can be like, hey, I don't care if you listen, just can you help share this, do this, or what, it's just so, and I don't have, and even for Last Podcast, they have been doing it for over 10 years. So that's why they have a network. That's why they are where they are, because they started years ago in some like basement of some restaurant or something with a round table of gentlemen. And that just was them drinking and just talking about whatever random true crime headlines. And it's just super fun and raunchy and weird. And I love it. And then they eventually developed, and so you find like the thing. But I mean, like, how long have you been doing this podcast for?
I've been in podcasting for over 4 years now. I've been doing this podcast. It gets complicated. We've been doing this iteration of the Microdose since July of 2020.
Yeah. So it's just a couple years, and
Mhm.
the past couple years have gone by very quickly. And then when there's so many podcasts out there. It's like,
Oh yeah.
I thought I've already like seen so many. There's still so many more. How is this possible?
And then the
So
podcast you have been with forever, you're like, okay, Adam Carolla, I've heard you talk shit about your mom for the millionth time. Now I'm just gonna fast forward all of this. Oh damn, it's the whole episode. Oh, um, true crime.
yes.
What is the case that is solved or unsolved that sticks in your brain?
Oh, what's the biggest one that I would really just love to have solved? You'd think I'd have like something just like come out before you even finish your sentence, but I
Mhm.
think there's so many that it's just like right now I would really love
Knee jerk
for
reaction.
something
Doesn't
to,
even have to be your favorite.
yeah, Libby and Abby from they call it the Delphi Murders. So
Okay.
they're two young girls who were 14, and it was a few years ago. They had a day off of school. They went on a bridge for a walk. And the creepy part of this is that they were found murdered later. The one clue that they've had is that while they were walking on a bridge, there was a man behind them, and they were Snapchatting, and they caught video footage of the man, and they released a small bit of footage where the man is saying, "Hey, go down the hill," or whatever. And you can bear it's just kind of garbled, and you're like, what? And it's
Mhm.
like, and it's creepy because you're like, okay, everyone's speculating what happened. And that, okay, so he's saying that. Why did he say that? For one, are the police sharing all of the video, or is that all they have? Probably not all they have, especially
Mhm.
because there's just all these things about how they were found and stuff that have come out in different forums, but it's not officially come out about how like what happened to them specifically and stuff like that. And so now they've recently, because well, first it was down the hill, then they're like, oh, we were releasing a new clip with new audio, and it's like him saying, like, I think it was him saying just like, hey, or something, go down the hill, or
Mm.
something like, so just they add another word. It's like, is that really going to help? Like, can you say the cause of death? Maybe you know someone with a weapon that was similar. Like, why isn't there
Mhm.
more being shared about this? What are they trying to hide at this point? But they did share recently that there was a person who they, I think what they're getting at is these girls were potentially catfished, which was a theory that people were spreading around. That were they talking to someone on the internet and they really wanted to go to the bridge all of a sudden because they're talking to this guy, and he's like, hey, I'll meet you at the
Okay.
bridge today. So now they're releasing, there's this guy who had been catfishing people, and he was using this super young supermodel body and image and contacting different people, and they contacted these girls or were talking to them. So now they put out this person's profile because they found the real person, it's not him. So they're
Mhm.
trying to say, if you have interacted with this person during this time period, kind of thing, let us know. We want to find out if you met them, what you conversation you had, blah, 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 blah. And that's
Right.
kind of the
Right.
last thing that I heard. I don't know, think there's been anything really since, but it's just like, oh my God, like not only that, there's other Missy Beavers. That's another one. I'll tell you about that one in a second. But
Okay.
these different cases of people where you have something on camera, but it's just not enough to figure out anything. And it's like, but they're right there on the camera. How can you not tell who they are?
Mhm.
So it's really heartbreaking because like Libby and Abby, they tried to get footage, they felt scared. They tried to like send a message almost in a way from, like
Yeah.
save like information and be like, this is someone who's following us. This is scary. We're recording this. And yet that's not even enough to find the person. And then Missy Beavers, she was a woman, and sorry, I don't remember where this was exactly. I think she was from Texas, but I think she was in another state. Neither of
Okay.
that could all potentially be wrong. But she was like an aerobics type instructor kind of thing, and she would do these like fitness camp things. And so she had went early at like 4:30 in the morning to this church, and that's where she was having her fitness thing. And she ended up being murdered, of course. And but what happened, they had this guy on camera before she got there who was in big SWAT gear, and his feet were like pigeon toed, and he was swinging a hammer around and hitting doors and stuff and just wandering around in this fake SWAT gear.
Oh
And
my goodness.
it's so creepy. And you're like, and it's, I don't know if they have footage of her being murdered and they haven't obviously released it, or if
Mhm.
it was in a different area, but he was like going into different rooms and just wandering around this building just before she got there and is pretty clearly the murderer, but it's like they don't even know if it was a man or a woman. There's different speculation on who it was based on how they're walking and stuff, and the gear they're wearing. And so it's just, when I first heard that case, it really terrified me because I was working late at work at the time by myself doing cleaning, and I was like, oh my god, they're gonna, I know, I'm like listening to the most horrible things, and I'm like, I'm gonna die like this. I'm so gonna die like this. It's gonna be on camera. And so I had to have a break for a while, and then eventually I was just like, okay. But yeah, like those are, it's just, I think those kind of cases are really scary to me, where it's like, you know, like you kind of have a little bit of a hint of some kind of evidence, and yet there's nothing there that you can really use. And it's kind of like back in the day too with true crime, when before they had DNA, and even when they had DNA, but people didn't understand it that well. So it almost was more confusing to use it in trial, which it's kind of like, I don't know. Anyways, so that's a couple cases.
That's a couple cases. I know you're not just into true crime, but are you into paranormal stuff as well?
I'm not quite as into the paranormal. That's the one thing I'm just like, I try to listen to certain things, but it just, I guess it's too like, I'm too like, I don't believe it, I guess. So it's
not
like,
believe it. That's fine.
I guess that, but there's things that I find like fascinating, but it's just not quite as intriguing to me, I suppose.
I like true crime, but I dabble a little bit into it, but I also like the random paranormal stuff as well. And while I don't necessarily believe in ghosts specifically, I also don't know that they don't exist. And if that sounds stupid, fine. All right, whatever. But I do like watching these YouTube channels where they're like, hey, here's this Ring camera footage of there's a body jogging down the street. Guess what though? It's missing a head. Like the torso is there, the arms are there. It's fully animated, but it's absolutely a decapitated corpse running down the street. And it's like, well, how do I? That's definitely not just a headless corpse running down the street. There's something, and it's a whole thing where like the Ring camera is taking an entire snapshot, and because of just a certain glitch, like it managed to like miss this guy's head for like 4 meters. You know, like why that part happened, but that's the explanation. I like that stuff. You know.
Yeah, I do like those things where it's like little twists. I mean, this isn't quite as significant or interesting, but when I was a little kid, I had a friend who she kind of started like hanging out with this guy, and I was like, why are you guys hanging out so much? And I was probably like 9-ish or something, or 10, and she's like, oh, we like to talk about ghosts and stuff and blah blah blah. And I'm like, I'm into ghosts and stuff. And then like, because I just wanted to be included, and then so I just like was trying to have a moment. I'm like, I swear I've seen a ghost before too, or I'm going to, and I could hear like this weird sound that was like I can't even imitate it, but just this weird noise in my closet all the time. And I was like, I wonder if there's a ghost in my closet. I'm just like trying to latch on to anything that might seem weird. And then eventually I realized it's because my mom's closet was on the other side, and it was her moving hangers on her side, and I was hearing that. So I think that kind of like broke the spell for me. It's like I always end up looking for the logical explanation for something, but there are things that are just creepy and very difficult to explain. So I totally understand that too. So
there's a lot of stuff that's very easy to debunk, and you're like, oh, okay, the guy who put this together didn't understand, like this is a fan film or whatever. The Japanese have a lot of fun stuff, but it's also very stereotypical Japanese. So it's the pale girl with the long stringy wet hair, but then she's just like stuck in the wall doing this shit. You folks listening at home will have to imagine that, but if you saw like The Ring or The Grudge, you already knew what I just did there. Like, and it's absolutely just like, okay, that's fake footage, but I appreciate seeing that. I've seen animated stuff for like portable tables, collapsible tables, or just like walking back, and I was like, oh, this is the most entertaining CGI thing I've ever seen. Like, and they got the grain right, and you know, yes.
I appreciate the artistry and the effort that more than anything.
Well, there's also times where it's just a hobo just creeping around the corner, and it's, you know, that's creepy too. But you're like, oh, why are you spelunking in this One, why did you go to the broken down insane asylum? And why did you have to go at night? Like, there's a hobo living in there. Go away. He's gonna stab you badly. You know.
Exactly. I mean, you do anything at night with the right camera and lighting, and you're gonna find some weird things that are gonna look funny. Like, and you can use that to be like, oh hey.
I don't follow much true crime where I don't like have a specific thing chambered, but there was a Netflix documentary during the pandemic called "Don't Fuck with Cats."
Mm-hmm. Yes,
well put together. It was an interesting story, but I kept the longer it went, the more irritated I got with it. Where like all these folks are just regular ass people. They saw this one clip that disturbed them, and they're like, "We have to get justice for these cats. Like this isn't okay." I'm good with all that. What I don't like is once they caught this random dude in Romania who was just torturing house pets, they didn't continue it further, and they kind of call themselves out for it, but like also like you've just discovered this talent you never knew you had, and you're good at it. You could like help find missing children now. Like what?
Yes, I'm curious if they like went in that direction, if any of them did or not. Like if like, but if any, you know, they like, yeah, they did the movie and they did all that, but did any like maybe potentially like were they ever invited or tried seeking out different like, you know, criminology or like different like IT with criminology kind of thing or something like, because yeah, like it's so like we need people who like, I think that's just collectively like, you know, I always would like to be a nurse or doctor or someone important that can help save lives, but I'm just not that kind of person. I'm not smart enough, and I don't have that thing in me and stuff, that passion. But when someone is good at something like that, and they did do that, like, yeah, you guys could go on and do something like go work in the world of like of some like do something to help track down these like human trafficking rings and stuff like that. Like there's got to be ways that like to navigate. And I know that like, yeah, there's the professionals who do it. So it's like, why don't you go and just be a professional? You probably get paid a lot more, you know, like,
I mean, to be fair, maybe they did that months after the documentary was released. Like maybe they thought long and hard about like, you know, I should go to community college and get this degree in criminology. Like you can do that. You can easily achieve that in 18, 24 months. I don't know. I had author Bob Calhoun on, who wrote a book called The Murders That Made San Francisco. And it didn't get as heavy as this got. And there's like grisly murders in that book. So I'm gonna just focus the subject on two bad movies. You recently had my co-host Mike Fish on to talk about Sleepaway Camp. I've never seen that movie, but when he told me, he was like, "Yeah, I'm doing this podcast about Sleepaway Camp," I started going into hysterics because I knew the twist. I listened to all the podcasts that have covered Sleepaway Camp. I'm well informed, so I was like, "Well, I hope you enjoy that one, buddy." Listen to the show, fun stuff. But what's your favorite bad movie? Your favorite good bad movie, or bad movie, whatever you call it.
Yeah, I mean,
knee-jerk reaction. Don't worry about your top 5.
Oh, I was just about to say Sleepaway Camp again, but I'm like, I just covered that. I should talk about something different. What's a really good bad one that like I like to watch and make fun of? Oh, well, there's one recently that I watched that I do want to do an episode about, and it's True Crime with Alicia Silverstone. And it's from like 1996, I think, or 1995. And I had never heard of it. I think it was on Amazon Prime or something. And I was like, oh, I was like, again, I just look up like 80s, 90s movies, and anything that just looks awful, I'm like, I need to watch this. And so, so that's how I came across True Crime. So I was like, oh, well, I like True Crime, and it has Alicia Silverstone, and it's from the 90s, and it looks like it's bad. So let's watch it. it's just.
Yeah, I've never heard of that movie either.
Yeah, there's a reason why.
Oh. Okay. But I'm like a dude who's heard of even like the worst movies. Like whether it's good or bad, there's usually a movie that even if I haven't seen it, I know all about it. And I've already absorbed it through osmosis. And I'm like, all right, yeah, all right. I know what that is. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I guess that's how obscure this one is, but it's like
fascinating.
It's not, I don't even know if you'd say obscure. It's just like a random movie from the 90s that someone decided to make. And Oh, who was it? I had done more research at the time when I was watching it just because I was so fascinated by it. I was like, this is the most like this is awful. And it was directed by a woman, which really surprised me because it was
Which
very
one?
like
Which
no,
woman directed?
which woman was it? I have to look because there's something about her that I found really interesting. But I don't remember what it was.
That's
So
okay.
let me
We
do it a
just did
quick.
a kick-ass movie podcast where a woman directed Cynthia Rothrock in a movie that I believe when the project started, it was Cynthia Rothrock's movie, but then funding fell out. And then this other guy came in and funded the whole project. This is a Canadian film. And then it was like, it became his movie. And it's, you can see it in the cuts, but
What was the name of the movie again?
Tiger Claws.
Tiger Claws.
It's like 1996, I want to say.
Is that like a
It's a
slightly
it's a
different kind of donut instead of a bear claw?
fair enough. Yeah, that's funny. That's
Wow.
funny.
So Claude Corpses clue police detectives to a killer of martial artists in New York. Wow. That was
Yeah.
great. 92 especially.
Oh,
Yes.
92. Burp. Okay. We
Oh,
literally
that.
just talked about this like 2 weeks ago. So
Oh,
my
wow.
bad.
Okay, I'll have to go listen because it looks like it's
Oh,
something I would like.
it's coming out in a month, but yeah,
Okay.
yeah, 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 yeah. I will send you the
I
link
will.
when we're ready.
Yes. Thank you. I'll stay tuned.
So the director of that is a woman who would go on to do Kids in the Hall Brain Candy. Speaking of Canadian stuff here. And then not too many
Oh,
features. She mainly dabbles in television now, like a million TV credits, but only 7 feature films. I forget her name. Terribly sorry, but she's a good
okay.
director, especially with Brain Candy. That shit was amazing.
Kelly Mackin?
I'm gonna just say yes
Oh,
because I
wait.
don't have the information in front of me.
Okay. Sorry, I'm really bad with knowing directors and stuff like that. It's like even if
Same.
I try to look them up, names always escape me unless it's like an actor or someone that I've grown up seeing all the time or I'm obsessed with or something. But like other than that, it's just like, what was their name again? But yeah, this it's for True Crime, the movie True Crime. It's Pat Verducci, which I have to look her up now. IMDb sometimes drives me nuts.
Pat
Does it
Verducci
bother?
sounds like a coach for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Oh, she was. Just kidding.
Hmm, that would have been
Okay.
amazing.
So I'm just looking it up because what was the interesting thing about her? Or I think maybe it says she's a writing coach, teacher, tormentor, maybe mentor. um,
Tormentor.
yeah. Um, so it says she's written screenplays and stuff like that. But I think like, okay, so movies, True Crime, Smoked, Promised Land. That's
Mhm.
come up. I don't know, nothing that I've heard of really. And so,
Yeah.
and then now she teaches writing, and it's like, are you qualified? Just kidding. Just kidding. If Pat's listening, probably isn't. But if you are, I'm just joking. I'm not
It's
judging you for your 1995 or six or whatever movie that was kind of exploitative of a
I mean,
young
it's hard
teenager.
to get these things produced. Like, it's amazing that any movie gets made, even like Tiger Claws. And again, because funding fell out, and this other dude came in just like, sure, I'll fund your movie, but I'm also going to star in it and kick everybody's ass. And
Exactly.
that dude is a legit badass, but at the same time, it's just like, oh, you went
But
to
like,
major lengths to get this thing made.
yeah, and it's like, okay, if you don't have the budget for the right, like, because there's so many like movies with lower budgets it's like you have the right combination of the actors, the right like written dialogue and stuff, the right like way it's filmed and like and not being so like not just pandering but like almost like condescending or something with like how
Hmm.
they do things, like it's like treating the audience like they're so basic, and it's like, is it that, or are you just so lazy you can't put more effort into like your exposition or your whatever kind of thing, like I don't know.
I hear what you're saying. I am picking up what you're putting down. Other good bad movies that I would absolutely recommend you covering if you get to them is a Miami Connection. That thing is amazing. It's about a rock band / taekwondo group. They just get booked for a gig, and the folks that they took that gig from are very upset, and then they enlist the help of some ninjas who are involved in a bad coke deal, and just shit goes wild. It's
Please tell me that a lot of those movies that you like and know are really bad martial arts older movies, because I love that. Like like I haven't watched in forever, but City Hunter was one that with Jackie
oof.
Chan that I
Okay.
just when I watched it, I loved it so much because it was so ridiculous. I was like, my friend showed it to me. She had it for whatever reason, and she's like, "Let's watch this." And I was like, "What is this movie? I love this so much. I don't understand." They have like a random like music video scene in the middle of it where they're on some ship.
Yes, that was the 90s. That was the 90s. I used to think I was pretty well versed in that, and it's only because of the Kick-Ass Movie podcast, which is another podcast I do with director Len Kabasinski. That guy knows more about 90s kung fu films than I know about anything in life. So you yourself should absolutely check that show out. But
Yes.
that's those are things we are re-uncovering with all of this. So Miami Connection, you should absolutely check out. Something that isn't a kung fu film is Fantastic Voyage. It's from the 60s. You've seen this movie multiple times in remakes. The most recent one I can say is called Inner Space with Martin Short. But you know, like other TV shows have done it before. But basically, it's the Cold War. This Russian scientist has all this information stored in his head. Someone gave him a concussion, and he's in a coma now. So this team of scientists have been shrunk down microscopically and inserted into his bloodstream, and they got to extract this information and then get out before the potion wears off, and like they could kill this guy. They
Oh my
after like
God, that sounds
80
so
minutes,
good.
they will just grow back. It's an amazing movie. There's a lot of just stuff that slides under the radar where like they predicted video phones and video conferencing. So at
Oh
one
my
point,
God.
like this guy's just walking back and forth, just talking, and sure enough, the guy on the screen, his eyes are just following him left to right. It's a perfect sync. We're like, I don't see. You and I are talking through a video conference from San Francisco to Alberta. Like, there's a little green light here. There ain't anything like that within this movie, and you're just like, they got this shit down perfectly, you know.
That's so good. I definitely will have to check those out for sure. Like I've already got it. I've got some tabs up on my phone that I'll make sure not to close. And they're like, I just love those kind of movies. And this one sounds good. It's like such a interesting concept.
It's that old 50s, 60s sci-fi camp where, you know, like they just put a fishbowl over someone's head and that's a spacesuit. Okay. There's a heroine in it, but she's got the deepest of cleavage. You know, she's wearing a fishbowl, but her torso is exposed. You know, it's of its time, but it's still fascinating to watch. Last movie I'm going to recommend is 976 Evil, which is a show Kush and Kai covered. That's another podcast I do. And it's about a haunted 976 number. I feel like you're a little bit younger than me, or a lot bit younger than me. So do you know what a 976 number is?
No, I don't know.
Okay. Back in the day, there was this phone service. Sometimes it's 976 prefix. Sometimes the area code is 1900. It got mainly used for porn, but you could find like children's services. You could find your horoscope. Like it's always a recording, and it cost you like the call cost $2, but then there was an additional charge every minute after that. Okay. So they made a horror movie around that. And Robert Englund from Nightmare on Elm Street, this is his directorial debut. A lot of it doesn't even make sense, even in the time it was released in, but it's wildly entertaining.
Oh, that sounds good. I'm just looking here. It says like dialing the number for something called horoscopes, puts a bully teen in touch with the devil. I can only imagine what he gets the devil to help him with. Like,
You're
that's
gonna be
great.
tickled pink. I
I
swear
love
to God.
that.
So
I
you should check that out.
I will. I'll definitely be probably doing a movie a day for the rest of the week.
There you go.
I've
Well, I just
been,
gave you 3 to check out. Miami Connection has a riff tracks attached to it, so if you could find that, take that up because that shit is even better. It makes it took a cool thing and it made it better.
great. One thing that I watched this weekend that I wanted to ask if you've seen it before, it's one of those classics, but for me, I just got around to watching it, but it's Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Have you seen
I've
it or
seen
heard
that.
about
It's
it?
been a very long time. That's a black and white film.
Yes, yes, Betty
Yes.
Davis
Yes.
and yeah,
No
Joan
more
Crawford.
wire hangers.
Well, that's Mommy Dearest with Joan. Well, what is it? Joan
Are
Crawford,
those
but
2
played
different
by Tay.
movies? Oh shit.
Not exactly. Pretty similar. Crazy women.
Okay.
Women go crazy.
Okay.
Women be crazy. But
Women
that's
be crazy.
there's also because I was telling my mom about the movie because I was asking her if she had seen it. She's like, "Oh, is it Hush Hush Good Charlotte or something or Charlotte or whatever?" And then I looked
Mm.
it up and it had Betty Davis in it, and it seems like a not similar storyline, but kind of, and like a couple of isolated people in a house, and they're some people are going crazy kind of thing. So
Yeah.
yeah, Betty Davis, just her perpetually like her whole life trying to like hold on to the one moment when she was young and was like actually successful and everyone loved her kind of thing, but then she just grew up and her sister suddenly got all the spotlight and so Jane became an alcoholic, and then you're led to believe throughout the movie that she was the one who caused her sister to become paralyzed, her sister played by Joan Crawford, and then you find out at the end that she didn't. Joan Crawford actually ended up like trying to kill baby Jane, but in the process
Oh shit.
she broke her own spine and blah blah blah. It's just I just love Betty Davis, especially at the end, like because the whole time you're in this weird thing of like, what's happening? I feel bad for her, but she's also being crazy and abusive, and that's not okay. But then there's little snippets of things throughout the movie where you're like, okay, but she's saying like she's talking to Joan Crawford, and Joan Crawford's like, oh, um, I just want to let you know I'm gonna sell the house and stuff. And she's like, I kind of bought it, kind of thing. And then baby Jane's like, well, no, dad bought it for with my money for us, kind of thing. You're lying and blah blah blah. So you're like, who's
Mhm.
like lying, and is she going crazy for another reason, or whose side are we supposed to be on? And then by the end you're just like she do you remember very much, or do you remember the ending
It's
at all?
been forever
It's been
since
too
I've
long.
seen it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Well, so she's like isolating Joan Crawford more and more throughout the movie as she's going more and more insane and like
Okay.
kind of like falling back into being a kid kind of thing almost. And Joan Crawford relies on her because she's in a wheelchair and she's like slowly cutting off access to talking to people and stuff and all
Oh
this. And
shit.
then she finally takes Joan Crawford and drags her into a vehicle and drives her to the beach, and she lays her on the beach. And then there's all these people around them and she's just sitting and she's playing in the sand and she's like, I'm gonna get ice cream. Do you want ice cream? And then
Mm.
like meanwhile Joan Crawford's like, I'm dying. I need help. Like I'm about to die any second. I have not drank any water. I have not eaten. I'm laying in my own filth. Like, what is happening? And
Oh.
she doesn't say that, but you can guess. And
Yeah, yeah,
so
yeah,
then
yeah.
and then so baby Jane, I just keep calling her baby Jane, even though she's old Jane, but
Mhm.
Jane goes and gets the ice cream. Then these cops are there because they're trying to look for her and her sister, and they're like, they recognize her. So like, oh, where's your sister? And then she's like regressed into being baby Jane again. So she's like, my sister's gonna be a movie star. And she's holding the ice cream. The cops are like, oh, okay, she's gonna be a movie star. Well, can you help us show us where she is? And blah blah blah. And talking to her like she's a kid. And then all these people on the beach are hearing what's happening and they're concerned. So they start surrounding her and the cops. And then in her mind, she's like, they're all paying attention to me. I'm a star again. And she's just kind of like dancing and swinging and walking towards where her sister is. And then finally the cops break through the crowd and go to the sister to help her. And it just pans out. And she's just dancing and, feeling like she's the star again as all the people on the beach are like surrounding her, being like, who's this fucking crazy lady? It's just great. I love it.
All right. All right. Well, I think this is a good spot to end it here. Give us all the deets. Where can we find Rambling Ronnie's podcast one more time?
Okay, so you can find Rambling Ronnie on Twitter is where I'm really active. And so I'm at Rambling RONI. And then there's Facebook, Instagram. Look up the Rambling Ronnies podcast. And you can email me if you want, ramblingronniespodcast@gmail.com. And yeah, just look for me, follow, subscribe on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple, wherever you listen, and have a little listen. Please let me know what you think, because I'd like to know if you like the episodes or don't. And if there's something you'd like to recommend, please let me know. And yeah.
There you go. I somehow managed to squeeze in plugs for all my podcasts except for one. So I'm going to recommend check out Sweet Science Cinema. Last episode we did was Rocky IV Ultimate Director's Cut, Rocky vs. Drago. Just check it out. There's nothing connected to this episode to that. It's just a fun episode. You'll enjoy it. Otherwise, for Rambling Ronnie, I've been Kush Hayes. You've been you.
Microdose, 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 yeah, microdose.
From the BosNet family.
So Claude Corpses clue police detectives to a killer of martial artists in New York. Wow.